Hello, everyone, and welcome to another elite episode of the Get Authentic with Marcus show. I'm your host, Marques Ogden. On today's episode, we are joined by Mr. Daniel Wood. But before we bring up Daniel to the stage, I want to thank one of our amazing sponsors, Tactical Harmony. Rebecca Fitzsimmons is a former NCIS special investigator turned leadership coach. She helps people and organizations improve their business efficiency and go from ordinary to extraordinary. If you want to find out more information, go to www.tacticalharmony.com. Again, we thank Rebecca and Tactical Harmony for sponsoring this episode. Now, here he is, Daniel. How you doing today, Daniel?
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing well, my friend. First question, Daniel. What does the word authentic slash authenticity mean to you?
Well, can I tell you a funny story about that?
Please.
So I live in Sweden, and in Sweden, so we talk a lot about integrity.
Mhm.
And when I was going into a business partnership many years ago, we were discussing this question of integrity. What I didn't know, and I grew up in Sweden, but my dad's from the US. So for me, integrity is very close to authenticity, right? It's, you do what you say you're going to do, you stand for what you stand for, you're honest, you're open. But what I didn't realize is that integrity actually means the opposite thing in Swedish.
Hmm.
Integrity, or as we say it in Swedish, then integritet, means the opposite. It means this is my space and that is your space, and that, leave me my space alone. So I was sitting in this business meeting and we're setting up, all of our, the business, and we're discussing corporate values, and we're both like, yeah, a key value to me is integrity. And we're both like, great, that's awesome. And we were saying this in Swedish, so I was the one who was in the wrong here. But it turns out we're saying the exact opposite thing. So when we then come to one of the events we were running, and I start opening up and I talk about like setbacks and challenges that I've had in my past, and like, this is how we learn by making mistakes. They completely freaked out. Like, whoa, no, no, no. We talked about integrity. I was like, yeah, we talked about integrity. I was sharing my story. That's no, integrity means this is my space. You do not share your screw ups. And obviously, that was when the partnership fell apart, when we realized that we said the same word but meant the opposite. So integrity is a key value for me.
That's awesome. Right back. I mean, it's not good that you guys had that issue, but again, what I'm hearing is authenticity to you, right? Dan, is that being integrity and having someone that can be very honest, be very vulnerable, and share the realness of their life, not just the fluff or the parts that you feel that we need to hear or want to hear. Right? Would that be accurate?
Yeah, exactly. I always say whenever we run any of our events, I don't have any skeletons in my closet. I have lessons we can all learn from.
Love it. Love it. Daniel, please share with our audience, our global audience. You have a very amazing story of what you've gone through. Please share that with our global audience and how it's led you now to have and develop the Swedish Wealth Institute.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm very blessed what all this led to. The journey was very tough, but today with the Swedish Wealth Institute, we're running events all over the world. We're doing North America, we're doing the European time zone, we're doing Asia Pacific. We work with some of the most amazing speakers in the world: Les Brown, Brian Tracy, Robert Kiyosaki, Nick Vujicic, Jack Canfield, and so many more. Um, Obviously, as with any story, it didn't start there, but it did start with me reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which makes it very fun that we work with Robert and Kim Kiyosaki now. It's that whole full circle moment. But it started out with me reading that book, and I was in a regular kind of corporate job. My whole goal was to become a CEO one day, and be successful. And I read the book, and there were a few things that really kind of stood out for me. One was, don't climb the ladder, own the ladder. And it kind of it basically ruined my entire life plan, just that one sentence in the book. Because all of a sudden I realized, why am I working so hard to climb the ladder and build someone else's house when I should be working on my own? The next was when he talked about assets and liabilities and about real estate and building that kind of passive income, which I think is what a lot of people take with them. Now, I've always said that I live a very charmed life. And about a week after finishing the book, I saw an ad on LinkedIn saying, come to a property investing. This was in the UK. We say property and not real estate, but come to a property investing seminar. And so I said, this is perfect. And so I was in Sweden, but this was a UK company who came to Sweden to teach about how to invest in real estate. And, they shared how Sweden's a very tough market to invest in. There's a lot of regulatory pressures, and how the UK is a very good market. It's very similar to the United States. And I got really excited. So I signed up for all their training. I spent about $25,000 on their mentorship program. And the whole promise was that they would help me invest in the UK. And because I was in
Mhm.
Sweden, their business promise was, it's a business in a box. They would give me the wholesalers, the solicitors, the accountants, everyone needed in order to pull a deal together. And I kind of went, wow, this is amazing. So what is it I'm supposed to do? And he said, well, your job is to go out and raise the money. We'll give you the presentations. We'll show you how to do it. And, you don't have any experience, but you're not raising money as yourself an investor. You're raising it on the back of this team that has, a combined 150 years of property experience. So you'll be fine. And so I said, great. And I go out and, friends and family, they invest with us, and we start buying property. And we started acquiring quite a lot of property pretty quickly. What we didn't know, and one of the problems with real estate is very, very slow, right? So the problems that were happening didn't come out until a lot later. And it turned out we'd been receiving fake build reports, fake rental reports. People had been stealing money from the company. Like, it was a mess. And by the time we'd, untangled this whole thing, we realized we'd been ripped off for about 400,000 pounds. So about $500,000. And, I'd pumped in my life savings into this, but that was just a fraction of that loss. And, this was friends and family. And I'll never forget getting a phone call from my accountant, Michael, who called me up and said, Daniel, it's time to bankrupt your company. And now, as a Swede, that is very different for when an American hears that. So, I always joke with people that I remember watching Shark Tank and seeing one of the sharks say, I never invest in a company that hasn't gone bankrupt at least 3 times, or a founder that hasn't gone bankrupt at least 3 times. In Sweden, it's very different. If you ever bankrupt a company, you can basically kiss credit goodbye. No one's ever going to invest in your company. You're never going to get loans. Like that's it for your entrepreneurial journey. And so when Michael says this, I'm like, okay, well, all right. So what does this mean? And what do we do? He said, so what we'll do is we'll sell off the property you have, because, we still had some assets. We'll sell off the properties you have. We'll pay as much as we can to your creditors. Then we'll write off the rest, shut down the company, and I'll start you a new one. And you can start fresh with all these lessons. And I said, wait, what? He said, well, you've learned a lot these last couple of years. So yeah, we'll write off all the debt and you can start fresh. And I'm sure it'll go much better this time. I was like, that's amazing. Why didn't you tell me a year ago? Right? I've been stressed about this for a year. Like, why have you let me gone through it? He's like, well, but now we're at a point where it has to be done. But that's when I asked a question that changed my life forever. And I asked him, I said, Michael, what happens to my investors? And he said, well, they might get something back when we sell the properties, but generally they've basically lost their investment. I said, so I am starting fresh and they are losing everything. I said, yeah, well, I mean, that's what happens. I said, yeah, but Michael, what you don't understand is they didn't just invest in these projects, they invested in me. So no, we're not going to do that. We're not bankrupting the company. He said, well, I don't see how you have another choice. I said, well, there's always another choice. He says, so what are you going to do? I have absolutely no idea. But I'm proud to say we never did bankrupt the company.
Mm.
And what happened, but I still had no idea how to figure it out. Right. And this is one of those charmed moments again. About a week after that call, I saw a new ad, this time on Facebook, saying that Robert Kiyosaki was coming to Oslo to speak. And so Oslo is the capital of Norway, which at the
Mm-hmm.
time I was living in Stockholm. So it's about a 6 hour drive. So I pack up the family, we get in the car, and we drive over to Oslo, thinking that, all right, so we read the book and we started this journey, but obviously we were missing something. So maybe now, if we can learn from him directly, maybe we can fill in the blanks and figure it out. So we go to the seminar in Norway, and it was absolutely amazing, and we learned lots from Robert. But that wasn't what really changed my life. What happened was there were about 2,000 people at this event. And after going around networking, I realized that about half of us were actually from Sweden that had, traveled by plane, train, car over to this other country to come and listen to Robert. So finally I went to the organizers of the event and I told them, I'm like, you should have done this in Stockholm. You would have so many more people. Like half your audience came from a different country to be here. You should have come to Sweden. And they just said, no, no, no. These are all Norwegians. I said, no, I'm Swedish. We're here. And we ended up arguing for an hour. And it didn't matter what I said. They would not believe that Swedes had shown up. They told me Swedes are not interested in this kind of thing. And I didn't count because I had an American accent. So I didn't count as Swedish. So that was the perception. That's when I finally realized that this was the perception of Sweden outside of Sweden, that we were not interested in personal development or finance or entrepreneurship. And I realized this is why speakers weren't coming to Sweden. And now I was in a real bind, right? Because I knew I needed to learn more. I wasn't going to be able to figure out my property portfolio on my own. But can you imagine going to your investors where you've lost, $500,000 and tell them, hey, great news. I'm flying to Florida next week to go and learn from a speaker to figure this out. I mean, they're going to be pissed off, right? They're going to go, why are you flying to Florida? Just give me that money. Like, you stop wasting our money. And so I knew I couldn't start, traveling for coaching, and I couldn't afford to pay for coaching anyway. I was, $500,000 in debt. But that was when I realized that if no one else was going to bring these speakers to Sweden, I knew there was a demand. We actually put together a community. We were over 200 people that had gone through this training course with this British company. And we were all trying to help each other out, kind of figure out how we could solve this hole we were all digging ourselves into. But it was kind of like the blind leading the blind, right? None of us knew anything. But we realized that this is a community of 200 people that have invested heavily in their future. This is a community that speakers will want to come and connect with. And so we decided to kind of start a company out of this. Instead of this just being our kind of informal mastermind, we said, let's do this properly. We'll open it up to anyone and we'll start inviting speakers in. And that was how the Swedish Wealth Institute was born. It was never to be a profit center. It was to solve my real estate business. And we started bringing in speakers, and it went really well. Again, charmed life. And it's funny maybe that I say a charmed life after getting ripped off for $500,000, but I believe if everything had gone according to plan, I would be sitting on a beach in Bali now with a big property portfolio, sipping Mai Tais, and not having any impact on the world whatsoever. Because of what happened, we're connecting, hundreds of thousands of people every year with these amazing speakers. We're creating real impact, and we're living this mission we have to democratize success. And that wouldn't have happened if this hadn't. But again, for that charmed life, when we started the Swedish Wealth Institute, there was no one else in our country doing this. There had been another company that had, for about 10 years, had been teaching the principles from Rich Dad Poor Dad, and they'd shut down about 6 months before we started our company. And I had no idea. I didn't even know they existed.
Mm.
And no one else had come in to fill the void. So we had this huge pent up demand and this whole educated market that was just waiting for us to come in. And we filled that gap. And within a year, I got a call from the company that ran Tony Robbins events in Europe. And they said, "Hey, we've heard of your company. We need a new partner in Sweden. Are you in?" And I had no idea who Tony Robbins was. So I kind of went, "Well, we have a slate of speakers, but I'm sure we can squeeze something in." And I could hear, the person on the other line kind of laughing like, "Oh my God, this idiot has no idea that I just changed his life." And she's like, "All right, look, Daniel, let's do this. Schedule an event. We'll send one of our speakers. We'll sell tickets to go and see Tony. You'll make some money, but then you come with your clients. We'll cover your ticket, and you get to see what Unleash the Power Within with Tony Robbins is all about." And I go, "All right, yeah, free ticket. I'm in, sure." And so I hop on a plane, I go to London, and I walk into this event. And, remember, this is at the time we're running events with, 100, 200 people in the room, right? And I walk into this stadium with 12,000 screaming people, just waiting for Tony Robbins. And I look around and go, "Okay, this is different. This is not what I'm doing." And again, I learned so much from listening to Tony and Joseph McClendon III that day or those days. But what really changed, took me that next step on my journey was because I was coming on as a partner to the event, I was invited to a partner meeting backstage where, well, they didn't really network with me because these were companies that have been doing this for years and they met once a year and they wanted to network. But I got to see these companies that were bringing thousands of people to London from all over Europe and kind of listen to what they were doing and what they were doing differently from us. And I was super excited. So next year we came back. We had maybe 50 to 100 people this time. The first year we had 20. And what happened was, most of these promoters, they would see companies, they would come in a year and then they would disappear and stuff. But now I was back a second year and I'd grown. And so now I kind of they gave me the time of day. And I started networking, especially with the partner from Finland and the partner from Estonia. So Ilkka Kopelmäki in Finland and Roland Toko in Estonia. And about a month after the second Tony Robbins event, Roland calls me and says, "Hey, Daniel, I'm organizing a tour through Europe for Kim Kiyosaki and three of her friends. They're going to run a series of events. They're going to come here to Estonia. They're coming to Finland. Would you want them to come to Sweden?" I said, "Yes, of course I would. Like, yeah, let's do it." And it was perfect because we ran our annual Empowered Women event, and this fit perfectly into our schedule. And I was able to negotiate so that I got the event on the Saturday, and the others had it on like the Wednesday the week before and the Tuesday the week after. So we had Kim for this long stay, and they kind of said, "Look, if you want the Saturday, you got to put them up in a hotel for the 4 or 5 days there in Sweden." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so I take them out to, we go out for dinners, we go out for lunch, we show them around Stockholm. And finally, I showed Kim the situation we were in with our property business. And I explained, this is what's happened. And this is a problem I've had like literally for years. I've been trying to figure this out, right? And I haven't been able to do it. I've spoken to other coaches, other mentors, and no one's been able to help me figure out how to turn my business around. Can you guess how long it took her to figure it out?
Couple hours.
It took her 15 minutes. I mean, and
Wow.
this is the difference, right? She's done over 3,000 property deals. She was the one who used to manage and run the property portfolio for Robert and Kim Kiyosaki. So she
Mm.
just looked at it and went, "Look, just restructure that debt, restructure that deal, and do two more deals like that, and your books are balanced." And I was
Mm.
like, "Wait, what?" "Yeah, restructure that debt, restructure that deal, do two more like that, and you're done." And now, obviously, it took us years to actually do that.
Do it right.
Yeah, but for the first time in years, I had a plan, and that was kind of my light bulb moment where I realized that a bad mentor will cost you everything, right? They cost me my life savings. I ended up having to sell my home It cost me my marriage.
Mm,
A good mentor, just saved my future in 15 minutes.
mm,
And
mm.
that's the difference, and that's what we now with the Swedish Wealth Institute, because that's really when I understood this is my mission. Like, this is what I want to do. And yeah, that's what we try to do. We try to help everyone find their Kim Kiyosaki. We say we connect you with the right mentor at the right time to take that next step on your journey. And the goal is to help everyone find that Kim Kiyosaki that in 15 minutes can fix everything.
Daniel, this has been an amazing interview. I just have one final question. I want you to take no more than 90 seconds because I want you to really be concise. I want people to understand so quickly how big this really is. You mentioned Kim Kiyosaki, you mentioned the awesome programs, but I keep hearing coaching, mentorship, coaching, the right one, the right people. Please explain to people that are potentially wanting to come to the Swedish Wealth Institute, come to an event anywhere around the world. Explain to them how you all have great speakers, great people that are great coaches or potential mentors for these people, and how it's so important in your business, no matter what business you are in, to have the right coach slash mentor to make the most impact. I heard you say that word several times last segment as well. Make the most impact in their business, personally and professionally as well.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, this having played in the NFL, you wouldn't have had any of that success without the right people showing you how to train, how to eat, how to work on the field, how to work with your teammates. Like, yeah, we can hit the gym and be super motivated and excited, but we're not going to become a pro NFL athlete without knowing what needs to be done in what order and what way. And it's the exact same thing in business or in investing or in just life overall. Is there are people that have done what you want to do, and they can guide you through the most common mistakes. And this is the hard part, is you need to find someone that has done what you want to do. And it doesn't have to be exactly like the Swedish Wealth Institute is a unique company, right? No one does what we do. Every entrepreneur proudly says, right? But there are people that have built the business or scaled a business. There are people that have invested in property. There are people that have played in the NFL. And if you can get one of them to show you what they did so you have a roadmap to follow and that they can give you advice, it just changes everything. It makes it so much easier than having to figure it out on your own. And I think that's why mentoring, especially, is so very important. And then having that support of a coach to kind of push you, because all of us have down days, that complementary of a mentor to show you what needs to be done and a coach to help you get through and actually do it, it's it's the key. That's what makes the difference.
Fantastic interview, Daniel. Again, great insight on your program, the problems you had, the solutions you all created, how you're able to get everything back on track, how the right mentor, it took her 15 minutes to help you correct a lifelong problem. And now here you are impacting the world, impacting people for the better. And I'm so excited to have you on our show because that's exactly what our show is about. Authentic people with authentic stories. Daniel, how can our audience get in touch with you to find out more information about the Swedish Wealth Institute?
Oh, I appreciate that. And I appreciate your audience allowing me to listen and you to have me on your show. I mean, we'd love to keep connecting. And so, first off, I'd love to give everyone a free ticket to our upcoming events. No matter when you're listening to this, if you go to the swedishwealthinstitute.com/events, you'll see our upcoming calendar and we'll make sure you get a free ticket to an absolutely amazing event. We have some amazing summits planned for 2026 with, well, I've already mentioned some of the amazing speakers, so I'm not going to hammer that home, but you'll see all of them you'll see 10 to 20 absolutely life-changing speakers at the same event. And of course, we have our podcast, the Swedish Wealth Institute podcast, where I am blessed to interview amazing people like Les Brown, Robert Kiyosaki, Marques Ogden and other really cool people to share their stories. So if you want to learn more about, what Marques here does, or what some of these other speakers, how they changed their lives, because what I'm always trying to figure out is what is the difference that makes the difference, right? So that's what I'm going to be asking you about is you, every dad dreams for their kid to become a sports star. And most kids have at least a part of them dreaming about becoming a sports star. And only a very, very select few, like 0.00 whatever percent, ever make it to the level that you make it. And that's what I want to figure out is like, what made you special? What was the difference that made you stand out? I asked Jack Canfield the same thing about Chicken Soup for the Soul. I mean, it sold 600 million copies. And like, that's not the first book with positive short stories. It's not the first book on personal development, but it is the first book that sold for 600 million copies. So, what was the difference that made the difference? Why do some people have that massive success? And that's what we're trying to figure out with all these things, with the Swedish Wealth Institute podcast, which you can listen to on any podcast platform or go to swedishwealthinstitute.com/podcast, or at any of our events. So we'd love to connect with you.
Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, please go and support him and check him out and check out his podcast. I'm going to be a guest on there shortly. Phenomenal human being with a great mission. We want to thank one of our amazing sponsors, Rebecca Fitzsimmons and Tactical Harmony. And the authentic tip of this great interview, it is a Jack Canfield equation. E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. You cannot control the events that happen around you at times, but your response, such as your behavior, your thoughts, and your images, according to Jack Canfield, you can control to have the best outcome. So take control of your behavior, your thoughts, and your images to have the outcome that you want and desire in your life. Again, my name is Marques Ogden. I am the host of the Get Authentic with Marques show. Thanks for tuning in. Have a fantastic day.
Recording stop.